Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Easy XP, your one-stop location for gaming news, info discussion, and other gaming goodness. We've got another ordinary show lined up for you today. We've got some news coming up, some things that we've got to revisit, and then I'll be talking into what's happened in my world of gaming for this week, and then we'll finish it off with a discussion topic of the week, all interdispersed with lovely OC remix tracks for your listening pleasure. And with that in mind, let's get the ball rolling with the news. Zenimax sues Oculus VR. I talked about the possibility of this a few weeks ago, and it's finally happened. Zenimax has officially sued Oculus Virtual Reality over intellectual property rights. Zenimax has released an official statement regarding the suit. The suit arises from the defendant's unlawful exploitation of intellectual property, including trade secrets, copyrighted computer code, and technical know-how relating to virtual reality technology that was developed by Zenimax after years of research and investment. Zenimax provided this valuable intellectual property to defendants under a binding non-disclosure agreement that specifies such intellectual property is owned exclusively by Zenimax and cannot be used, disclosed, or transferred to third parties without Zenimax's approval. Zenimax's intellectual property has provided the fundamental technology driving the Oculus Rift since its inception. Nevertheless, the defendants refused all requests from Zenimax for reasonable compensation and continued to use Zenimax intellectual property without authorization. Zenimax has also officially highlighted its specific concerns, which involve modifications to the original Rift prototype using Zenimax technology, including low-latency head tracking. Other concerns involve Carmack physically working on the Rift during his time with Zenimax and using Zenimax research. A little damning, isn't it? Keep in mind that this is very much the Zenimax version of events, and it is meant to convey the strongest case possible. No doubt Oculus have rebuttals and counterpoints to these claims, and it will be interesting to see how it ends up in court. The way I see it, there are two very different stories and motivations at play here, and it's very hard to tell who was in the right in this one. Admittedly, it's a little strange that, if these concerns are indeed valid, that Zenimax are only taking action now, considering Oculus now has unlimited Facebook funds to be sued out of. However, the way Zenimax tells it is that they have been trying to negotiate with Oculus for ages before the Facebook acquisition and are now forced to take action to defend their rights. I really do hope this ends well, because I still see great potential in the Rift, and it would be a shame if these allegations affected the Rift's development. I'll keep you posted should this develop any further. For our second story today, Watch Dogs' Australian prices increased overnight, just because Watch Dogs needed any more negative press recently. On the 22nd of May, the Australian Steam price for Ubisoft's upcoming Watch Dogs jumped in price from the US standard $60 to $75, a figure that Australian gamers would be more familiar with from retail releases. This kind of release day jump isn't unheard of, with cases of games jumping from $60 to $90 in the past. To their credit, Ubisoft have been very transparent with the reasons for the pricing jump, mainly involving the fact that Ubisoft Australia is part of the European business group rather than the US one, meaning that they have to trade at European prices, and they have been actively replying to concerns voiced by Australian gamers. However, there is no reason why this should be the case for the digital release. No matter how comparatively small the jump, no matter how transparent they're being, this kind of price hike is practically inexcusable. Look, I get why Australian games cost more. I get that our minimum wage is higher. I know we earn more. I realize that it costs more to ship. I understand that. But this is a digital release. There is no reason why we should be getting the short end of the stick when it comes to game prices, when the process of shipping and selling a game happens online. When it comes down to it, the only reason we are paying more in the digital landscape is because they can get away with it because we are used to it. We've been buying games at this ludicrous rate for far too long, and I very much feel that it's probably time for this Australia tax to finally end, considering that pretty much all of our games are bought and sold online, where there are no borders. I think it's a real shame that Watch Dogs has been lumped in all this bureaucratic nonsense, when I remember first reading about Watch Dogs, first seeing the first trailers, I was really excited. I thought it was going to be cool, an incredible new idea, this first next generation game. But as time has passed, it's just been riddled in corporate monetization nonsense, and it's just been really unfortunate seeing it go down the way it has. Oh well, I'll have to wait until the reviews come out for it and see if it's been worth all the hassle in the long run. And now finally to our final story of the day. YouTube to buy Twitch for $1 billion. Variety magazine hinted that YouTube, and by extension Google, was going to buy the streaming service Twitch for $1 billion. Google representatives have since clarified that they are only in early talks with Twitch for such a deal. This being the internet we're talking about, you can only imagine how that turned out. Naturally, there's been a lot, and I mean a lot, of criticism, a lot of hate, and a lot of people generally not terribly pleased, saying, oh, this is going to be the end of Twitch, oh, it was all going so well. This is going to be a bit of a theme, I think, for today's episode. I think people need to just chill out, step back, get a cool head, and think. Don't jump to knee-jerk reactions, especially when we don't know anything about this. We don't even know if this is a confirmed thing or not, let alone what effect it's going to have on Twitch. People are saying that, they're going to force Google Plus integration into Twitch. Well, they tried that with YouTube, and people hated it, and they've been slowly retracting it ever since. I have a feeling that they're going to mostly leave Twitch alone to their own devices on this one, if of course the deal goes underway, and just throw a bit more funding at them, because maybe do some basic YouTube integration, but that's probably not what they want. Because I have a feeling that Google might have learned. They don't want people to, they don't want this knee-jerk reaction, and so they're not going to immediately jump in, mess around with things, and get everybody cross, because that's certainly a way to piss off the viewer base, to put it lightly. And that's essentially what they're buying with Twitch. They're buying a viewer base. Twitch is the largest streaming service in the world. There are multiple streaming services, but Twitch is the only one that has an active and constantly growing community. Other streaming services just don't compare. And that is what Google and YouTube are trying to get from it. And I just don't see them swooping in, trying to change stuff, breaking everything, and alienating the entire fan base, because it just seems entirely unlikely. So, once again, I think it's probably time for people to step back, relax, wait for it to pan out a little bit, and we'll see where this goes. And, of course, with a little bit more funding, they obviously have the opportunity to improve their service, which I personally would be very happy for, because us being Australians and Twitch being what it is, we've never had good experiences with Twitch. For instance, I am on streams in medium quality even. It's very hard to keep up a stable connection to Twitch servers. So increasing their infrastructure, putting Twitch servers around the world, I don't see a problem with that. But like I said, I will keep you posted should this develop any further. And that does it for the news. And I think that it is time to go to our first track. This is, well, last week I was a little bit adventurous, picking genres and games that I don't normally consider or look at to include in the show, and so I thought this week I'd go completely to my taste. Treat myself after 8 or so weeks of doing this. Treat myself to a little bit of an indulgence track list this week. And so all of these tracks are going to be mildly jazz flavored, and I hope you will enjoy them. And so to begin, I have a track from the virtually infamous DJ Pretzel, who is the owner of OC Remix, the site which I receive all of my tracks from. And to say this is one of the classics of remixes probably isn't doing it justice. And so, for your first track this morning, I leave you with Jazz Plumber Trio. Enjoy. You are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM. My name is Den, your host as always, and that was Jazz Plumber Trio. No, I lie. No, sorry, my mistake. It was Jazz Plumber Trio. My iPod just switched over to the next track. I don't want to spoil the surprise for you. No, that was Jazz Plumber Trio by DJ Pretzel, and I don't think I need to tell anybody where those particular influences came from. Yes, Mario is a very classic inspiration for a lot of remixes, with good reason. All of the old Mario tracks are spectacular to play around with, and there are so many ways to play around with them, and as I said, DJ Pretzel is one of the original remixes. He started OC Remix, where I get all of my songs from, and which I hope I'm doing legally. But that's a story for another time. Moving on to our next section of the show, where I talk about what's been happening to me in this week of gaming. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play very much. I've just been continuing on with Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, which is still fantastic. I still go by what I said previously. It's a little rough around the edges compared to Dual Destinies, but it's still a fantastic game, and it combines the two worlds and the two stories of Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright together very well, and I was certainly very impressed that they managed to pull that off in the way that they did. So, I suppose I haven't been playing all that much, but there are two games this week that have caught my attention, two fairly new releases, and they're sort of very much on the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to video gaming, but they both interested me. And so the first one I'd like to talk about is Wolfenstein. The new Wolfenstein, I think it's called The New Order, Wolfenstein The New Order, which was released recently, and as I'm sure most of you would have heard of it by now. I mean, the advertising for it has been practically everywhere recently. It's one of those games that, for no apparent reason, just get immense advertising around Sydney for whatever reason. And I've been watching a bit of footage about it, watching a couple of people play it, and while it's certainly not my thing, I don't think, I'm not exactly in the mood or the market for that kind of shooter, I certainly think that it's a very interesting step forward. It's much more of a step towards the classic form of first-person shooter before they became all hard, gritty, brown, realistic, regenerating health kind of Call of Duty Battlefield kind of military-esque shooters. It's very much a remnant in a game made in the style of, well, Wolfenstein 3D, some of the first FPSs ever made, and that's fast, action-packed, and brutally silly. And that's exactly what I would describe Wolfenstein as. Silly. You can dual-wield automatic shotguns, for Pete's sake. I mean, there really isn't any other way to describe Wolfenstein than silly. Yes, it's gory, some of the themes are quite heavy with all of the Nazi Germany stuff, and that's what the story is about, an alternate history where the Nazis won World War II. And I actually think it's a good thing. I've never personally been a massive fan of the more military shooters. I had a lot of fun with Call of Duty 4, but they've just been slowly getting more and more, how do I put this? They're getting more and more serious, they take themselves far too seriously, and Wolfenstein says, no, we're not going to take ourselves seriously. We know that this is a big, pulpy, bloody action fest, and that's exactly what you want, that's exactly what you're going to get. And I absolutely respect them for that. However, on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, there's another game which, when I saw reviews for it, when I saw gameplay footage, I almost impulse bought it. And for me, I'm usually pretty strong with my buying habits, so keep in mind just what a significant impact this game had to have on me to get me to almost consider impulse buying it straight off the bat. It's a game called Transistor, and it's the second game by the studio who made Bastion. And from the look of it, it's practically a work of art, sort of in a similar way to the way Bastion was one of those games that people heralded it as an example of the older argument of games being art when we still had to prove that. It's certainly it's a beautiful looking, it's a beautiful running, it certainly seems like a beautiful playing game, and it's just one of those games that you couldn't get out of a AAA big publisher, something that's so focused, so intense on exactly what it wants to do without having unnecessary padding. And how do I know that AAAs can't pull off something like that? Because they tried. There was a game out recently called Child of Light, which was published by Ubisoft, I believe. And the entire game, don't get me wrong, it's wonderful, it's cutesy and wonderful, but it tries incredibly hard to be an indie game, and it's from a AAA publisher, and some of the elements of that is a little bit jarring. I certainly don't think it would detract from the game in any way, but just the comparison between Child of Light, which is a AAA dev desperately trying to create something that's indie, to the extent where the entire dialogue is done in rhyming couplets, to Transistor, which is just a small team working together, working consistently to create this wonderful looking and wonderful playing interactive experience. And that is certainly something that I wouldn't expect to see, and I'm glad that these two games came out so I could really draw and see comparisons between them. And so, in general, that's what happens to me in the week of gaming this week. And looking at it, we are actually running on schedule for once. It is an unprecedented miracle that we might actually be able to give the next show their entire time and also not put out 49 minutes podcasts for everybody. That is something I hope not to be doing for quite a while. And so, why am I stalling? We should move on to our next track. Continuing with our jazz theme, I thought that, and when it came down to this, I had immense difficulty choosing between this and the track I eventually chose for track of the week. So this is something that if it was any other week, it would be my track of the week, but simply because I had such great songs this week, I had to demote it into the second place slot. This is In the Beginning, There Was Jazz, by two remixes by the names of LSD and Schnabolba. I think that's Schnabolba. Either that's an incredible typo or an incredible pseudonym. And so this is a remix of tracks from Castlevania 3, and it is called In the Beginning, There Was Jazz. This is for In the Beginning, There Was Jazz from Castlevania 3 for your listening pleasure on this Monday morning. You are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM. My name is Den, and we are moving on to our next topic. You were just listening to In the Beginning, There Was Jazz by LST and Shnabalba. A lovely little jazzy track. Like I said, it was very hard to choose between this track and my track of the week for this week, because just some natural freeform jazz on some classic video game themes. There's really no way you can go wrong. And like I said, this is my kind of music. These are my kind of tracks. These are the kind that I would listen to in my spare time. And so I thought after doing something new with my tracks last week, with some games that I might not necessarily have thought would be remixable and some genres that I personally don't enjoy, I thought I'd tone it back a little bit and have a bit of a binge on some of the stuff that I liked. And it really was a joy finding all of these tracks. It was very hard to narrow it down to just 3 that I wanted to share with you this week. And don't worry, I've got many, many, many more tracks, not just jazz, but all of the remixes. I have so many that I want to share with you, and there isn't going to be enough time. I have a lot of remixes to share, and new remixes are added virtually every week that I want to share with you. So we are going to be doing this for a long time. As always, if you like any of the tracks you hear today, you can find them on ocremix.org. And for those of you listening on the YouTube podcast, you will be able to find links to all of the tracks in the description below. So finally, onto our discussion topic for the week. And I think it's something we've had to talk about for quite a while. It's something that I feel we might have touched before with certain other elements, such as pre-order culture, but it's something we've never really pinpointed to talk about, and that is the issue of DLC, and I mean modern DLC being downloadable content. Now keep in mind, I am not going to be able to get anywhere near the kind of depth or complexity within this argument in the time I have remaining that I would like. And so this is just going to be a sort of crash course, if you will. But needless to say, modern DLC isn't the best thing in the world. I actually thought about doing this topic in a recent announcement that the Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U would be using near-field communication figurines within the game. And for those who don't know what near-field communication figurines are, there's a game that some of you might be familiar with called Spyro Skylanders, where essentially to unlock certain parts of the game, to have some extra characters, you buy these figurines that you put in a sensor that gets transported into your game. And that made a lot of money for Skylanders, and I know Disney are doing something similar with Disney Infinity, which is their variation on that, where you can buy your favorite Disney characters to put into this game through these miniature figurines. And Nintendo, ever since the beginning, Wii U tablet controllers have had the ability to do this. Those of you who own a Wii U might have a look at your tablet, and if you've ever wondered what those 2 white squares on the side of your controller are, that's the sensor for this near field communication technology. And people are concerned that this is going to be when I say people concerned, people are angry. People are really, really angry about this. They're assuming that Nintendo are going to lock all of the characters behind paywalls. They're going to say that it's going to be impossible to unlock the entire game without paying hundreds of dollars for figurines. And like I said, this is going to be a theme of the podcast and the show this week. Don't have knee-jerk reactions to things. Just wait and be patient, because we don't know what these figurines are going to be doing in the game, let alone if they're going to be locking the characters behind paywalls. Like, we don't even know if these figurines are going to have any impact on gameplay at all, let alone whether they're going to be locking characters behind paywalls. And, sorry, that is completely off topic. The main concern that people are having is that this is just an example of modern DLC where publishers are locking off content from the game that probably should be part of the original game and hiding it behind extra payments to add on top of your initial purchase. This actually started a while ago with the concept of an expansion pack, where a game was released, and then an expansion pack which was released, which wasn't quite different enough to be a full game on its own. It was sort of like an additional storyline, essentially, or some additional features. And it slowly evolved in the modern era into what we now know as DLC, or downloadable content, where instead of getting large branching extra features and essentially extra storylines, you get smaller chunks of content for slightly smaller prices. And yeah, sure, I'm okay with that. If as a game publisher, after your game has been released, you want to spend a little bit more time and a little working on some more content for your game, then sure, go ahead. If I like your game, then I might do it. I might go ahead and grab some of that DLC. I think one of the best examples of this, and also one of the most infamous examples of this, was the original Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where in a game which has an active modding community, that being people can put practically anything into that game, they tried getting people to pay $15 to buy armor for your horse in Oblivion. And people just went, what? That seems completely irrational. But they did pull through on it by having a very, very good bit of DLC called Knights of the Nine, and also practically an expansion pack known as Shivering Isles. And that's sort of where it started. And there's now a modern trend in video games, and it's a very unfortunate trend of some slightly more greedy publishers, to have what's known as Day 1 DLC. And that is content on the game's release that has been cut away from the game to be put as a separate purchase. And it's very hard to justify those kind of practices, really. I mean, when it comes down to it, it was made before the game was released. Surely it should be included with the full purchase. And there is one argument that I have heard for Day 1 DLC that comes from the pure realms of the purely cosmetic. Like, for instance, on the first day, as either a pre-order bonus or as a bit of Day 1 DLC, you can buy an extra costume or something for your character. And yeah, and that seems alright, because when it comes down to it, for those of you who don't know how game development works, you don't have one person who does the entire thing. It's segregated into different groups of people. And you have artists and programmers. Towards the very end of a game's release, you mainly have the programmers working overtime to make sure the game is running as well as it can, while the artists have virtually nothing to do. And so, there is rationale that this gives something for those artists to do in the crunch time before the game is released. And yeah, I totally agree with that. I would agree with that if that was as far as it went. But there are many numerous cases of DLC, which includes entire missions, entire levels, that on the day of the game's launch are locked behind a paywall. And we really should neither be doing that, nor as consumers allowing them to do that. We really shouldn't be accepting this kind of DLC madness. Another thing that really brought it to my attention was, again, Watch Dogs. And jeez, I really wish this game had some other press than negative press recently. But Watch Dogs has 5 different launch day packs you can get. 5. So there are 5 different ways to buy the game on launch day, and each one of them has different bits of DLC and content attached to it. Somebody actually tabulated all the bits of content that have been cut up to be shared amongst the different versions, and they actually found that in order to get every bit of content that was made prior to the game's release, you would need to buy 3 versions of the game in order to get all of the games. It's quite ridiculous, if you don't mind me saying. It's nonsense that should be the case for a game that's just released, especially for something they don't know whether it's going to be successful or not. It's a completely new IP. They don't know what kind of reaction it's going to have. So the fact that there is so much DLC in the game to begin with that you need to buy the game 3 times to get it all, it's just absolutely ridiculous, if you don't mind me saying so. And I think this is really something that we as consumers need to get savvy about, and we really shouldn't be buying into day one content for our games, because Lord knows our games are expensive enough as it is, and we really don't need to be adding to the price. We should really be justifying a mindset among not only consumers, but also developers, that if it was made before the game's launch date, it should be in the game to begin with for free. I really think that is the bottom line to do with it. I really think there isn't much other... Apart from maybe some cosmetic stuff, I really think that's the bottom line. If the content was made before the game's released, it should be included in the initial release for everyone, and not cut away as a bit of DLC for somebody to use later. It's a very interesting topic, and like I said, I haven't nearly gone into all the intricacies of DLC here, and because there simply isn't enough time. I'm already running over time as it is. And so, yeah, I think I'll leave you with that. It's DLC as a whole, it can be alright. It can be alright. There are lots of instances where DLC is great. Like, for instance, Faster Than Light, a great indie game, had a bit of DLC that's pretty much acts as an expansion pack. Same thing with Terraria, which is another indie game that's had 2 free DLC expansion packs already. There are examples, when used well, where it can be significantly advantageous to the game, but the way that modern publishers are using it, it's a little bit silly. And so, with that, I think it is time to end our show. Now, as always, if you would like to contact us, you can email us at surgexp@gmail.com. That's surgexp@gmail.com. If you would like to suggest a game you'd like us to talk about, or if you'd like to suggest a discussion topic, or if you'd like to call us out for our nascent bias and fanboyity, that is now a word, fanboyity, then you can contact us there. You can also check out our YouTube channel for all our past episodes, or if there's any particular episode you have missed, and we can be found at YouTube user/SurgEasyXP or SurgEasyXP, or just search EasyXP Beta into your YouTube search. You'll find one of our videos, and that should take you straight to us, and try and wade through all the easy experience farms for Minecraft and other such games. Yes, I really didn't think that one out too carefully when I was naming the show, did I? Oh well. And also, speaking of the YouTube channel, YouTube offers me some very interesting analytics when it comes to the viewer base. And so, to my one listener in Poland, I would like to say thank you very much for tuning into the show. Your 44 on average seconds of viewership and listenership have been most vital to the ongoing success of the show, and I hope that you will listen to us in the future. And so, with that, I am going to leave you with our track of the week. Like I said, between this and my previous track, it was very hard to choose, but in the end, I think I just had to choose this one, because It's a little bit of jazz, it's a little bit electronic, and it's also by a remixer called Protodome, whose work I have showed in the past, and lots of it is truly excellent. This track is from Kirby, and the name was also one of the things that made me end up pushing it to the track of the week. The track of the week for this week is Chef Kawasaki's 16-bit orchestra, Walkway of Stars by Protodome. And you'll be hearing that as our track of the week very shortly. As always, my name has been Den. Thank you for listening to Easy XP. Enjoy.